Thank you, Janice. So, good evening, members and ladies and gentlemen. So, welcome to the Adults Health and Social Care Scrutiny Board on Tuesday, the 25th of July, 2023. The year is passing very quickly, and it's the first day where it's sunshine. So, hopefully we'll stream through this meeting and we may enjoy a bit the last little bit of sunshine this evening. So, welcome everybody. Item number 1 is substitutes nominated for the meeting and apologies for absence. We've had apologies from Councillor Bouchard, and Councillor Bellinger is the substitute for the meeting. So welcome, Councillor Bellinger, to your meeting. I think it's the first time you've been here for a while, so welcome. Item number two is for members to remind members of any declarable interests. Item number 3 is admissions to the public. It's not recommended that the public be excluded from the meeting for the consideration of the items of business on the agenda. For anybody looking on YouTube, you're most welcome, and I hope you enjoy the content of the meeting. Item number 4 is minutes of the Adults Health and Social Care Scrutiny meeting held on the 1st of
Chair,
yes.
We've just lost Janet.
We have, but I think we're still live. So I think
I got a message that came up, said that I'm the host now.
that's dangerous, but there we go.
I hear power corrupts.
There's also no chance of Robin being leaving at 7 then.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes, for just indicating that. I'm sure she'll either rejoin us and take over. At least she's not left us and cut us all off. That's the most important part. So minutes of the Adults Health and Social Care Scrutiny meeting held on the 1st of June 2023. I'd like to move those as a correct record. Do I have a seconder for those? Thank you, Councillor Hutchinson, and all in favour of those. Okay, thank you very much indeed. So item number 5 is integrated care board service plans and priorities, as in the Calderdale Place Lead West Yorkshire Integrated Care Board. So welcome, Robin. It's always nice to have you at our adults meeting, and welcome, Debbie, of course. So I'll hand the item over to yourselves to I think you have a short presentation.
We do, Chair, and we'll go quite quickly. I don't know whether it's possible for Janet or Mike to share the slides. Is that possible? As we're doing that, it'd be good if I'll make a start. And just thank you, councillors, and thank you for the invitation to this meeting. And just say, clearly I'm in the joint role, primarily this evening, talking to you about the work of Calderdale Cares Partnership, the priorities, and also the delivery plan for the next 12 months. So thank you, Janet, if you can make it a full screen, if that's possible, that would be really helpful. And what I'm intending to do is go through this quite quickly and cover some of the key things that we're doing as a health and care partnership in Calderdale, part of the West Yorkshire Health and Care Partnership. If it's possible to move on to the next slide, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Is that all right? And can you make it full screen, Janet? Is that possible?
Yeah, I'm just trying to do that, Chair.
Go to slideshow and make it full. If you click on slideshow at the top, along the right a bit. No, further along. To the right. You need to move it to the right. Where's slideshow? No. I'll keep going. So members, you'll be very aware of all of you are very involved on the Health and Care Partnership and the mission statement of one of the biggest health and care partnerships in England, one of the 42, which has around about a £5.6 billion budget for all health and care in West Yorkshire. It's a slideshow just where you're clicking there now. No, you've moved it. And its mission and values. Yeah, that's it. Click onto that. Click there. Click, and it should be full screen. No. Its aim is to deliver health and care to the 2.3 million population of West Yorkshire, to manage variations in care and secure wider benefits of health and care. You'll know that the health and care system's under real pressure and is very complex. And in this presentation, we're just going to talk about what we're doing in Calderdale. If we can move on to the place lead priority. So you'll know we have a place committee for each of the 5 boroughs in West Yorkshire, and I'll go through what are quite high level priorities that I've agreed and a kind of something that we have to agree with the Integrated Care Board at West Yorkshire level, and then Debbie's going to talk about what this means really in practice. So if we haven't still got the full screen, Janet, if we can try and get that, please.
Yep.
You just need to move it to where it says slideshow. You just need to move the arrow there. Right, so and if you move on to the next slide, that's it. Click it. Yep. And then do from beginning on the left-hand side there.
Yep.
Click that. Yeah, go on. Click that, and then you can click through. That's it. Click on the next one. Right, that's it. Next one. Right, so next one after that. Yeah. Right, so five priorities for, and I'll just move next slide if that's all right. So you may be aware that all integrated care boards are required to achieve a 20% reduction in their running costs by 2024 and a further 10% by 2025. That's in the core team of the place team in the ICB. That means we're having to look at our operating model, how we work across place and deliver effective commissioning, effective population health management, and ensure that we support staff through a period of uncertainty. So that's one of the first things that we're doing. The second thing that we're doing is ensuring there's good governance through the Calderdale Cares Partnership Board. We've recently appointed a new independent chair who's Jo Bibby, who's really delighted that she's been appointed through a competitive process. She's a director of research for the Health Foundation. I've just published a really interesting research report today about the future of health and care and the fact that by 2040, the level of people living with long-term conditions is accelerating even further. And she is our independent chair. We've also formally now approved the inclusion of the chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, Councillor Swift, as member of that board as well. He's also an observer in his role as chair of the Partnership Board of the West Yorkshire ICB. One of the things that we've really tried to do in Calderdale, and I think we're leaning away a bit on this, is ensure that clinical leadership is at the heart of decision-making about health and care. So you'll see that the fourth point down is establishing a primary care strategy group, and we have 2 GPs who have been elected by the local medical committee to chair and vice chair that, and those 2 GPs will be also part of the Calderdale Cares Partnership. In addition to that, we have the chair of the clinical forum, Dr. Stephen Cleasby, known well to most of you, who is also on the board, and we are supporting further collaboration. One of the important things to say is that our providers are working beyond a kind of commissioning provider relationship to be place leaders and sharing the leadership responsibility for the work of health and care in Calderdale. And Anna Basford, who I think most of you will know well, who's the Deputy Chief Exec of Calderdale Huddersfield Foundation Trust, is leading that work and doing some really interesting work around integration, particularly in the Upper Valley at the moment. So that's one of the things that we want to develop further. So if you move on, please, Janet, that's helpful. And the next 2 slides. So if I'd said to you that one of the things that's the most challenging perhaps and the most important in my priorities is the next one, which is quality and safety. We are working in a world of increased risk, increased complexity and acuity, and the need to manage that level of risk in community settings as well as in hospitals is really important. We have a very, very challenging market, and I know Kath has joined the call and clearly is working closely, as you all know, on supporting the social care market, which is fragile, faced with significant challenges around workforce retention, cost viability, and that inevitably causes us some risks around safety and well-being. We are also making sure we learn from practice issues as we develop challenges, and we support the market and also work to ensure equity of access for all those that receive services. And that means all our communities, and we've made a specific focus on those who are from my refugees and asylum seekers and newly arrived, of which the number, as you'll know, many of you will know from other presentations we've given to members, have nearly doubled in the last 3 years, and managing them in potentially challenging settings, including hotels. So that's a real important thing that we are doing, and we are the first integrated care system of sanctuary in England. So the next priority links very well to that around health and equalities, and I have a wider role at West Yorkshire level with Dr. James Thomas, the medical director of the ICB, on supporting population health. And we want to learn from the work we're doing in our place, and you'll know the buying our care work, and myself and Kath and the team had a further review of that work last week, and the governance work that's working intensively on that, the work that Debs is leading around health and equalities, and some of the work we're doing around arts, health and well-being, using the capacity, skill and brilliance of our creative community and their ability to help people live good lives and support good mental health. So that's one of our priorities. The final priority, and then I'll hand over to Debbie, is on the next slide. Janet, if you can move that on, please. That's around the budget, I believe. Yes. You'll know that the budget position for all health and care is challenged. We have a need as a wider ICB to set a balanced budget position. You'll know there's historically challenges with CHFT around the PFI contract. We're working closely with them and central government on resolving that. And we have a duty through delegated responsibility to ensure we deliver a balanced budget and also support social values. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour, Chair, of my overarching priorities in which we will be judged as a partnership. I'm going to hand over now to Debbie, who's just going to go through this quickly as well, just pick out a few of the areas in which we are delivering transformation. Janet, if you can move on to the next slide, and then I'll bring Debbie in. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, and thank you, members, for inviting me back here. It's been a while since we've been together, so it's good to be back. So I just want to talk to you for a few minutes about the Calderdale Cares Transformation Delivery Plan. So if we could move on, thank you, Janet.
Yep.
Super. So what is the plan? So for the first time, we've got one single view of the things that are really important to Calderdale in terms of transformation. And the aim is that we've done this for the first time, I think, as a system. So before, we've had lots of individual plans developed across our partnership, whether that's by providers or other organisations or commissioners. So the first time we have one. It sets out what we need to do, but also how we need to do it. So it's front-ended by quite a lot of the work that's been done to support the Health and Wellbeing Board in terms of ways of working, that kind of broader partnership. And really importantly, I know will be important to some members, are the key metrics that each of the programmes will be measured against in terms of success. So as well as doing the things that we need it to do, it also meets the West Yorkshire requirement to have a forward delivery plan that sets out, at least for the next 2 years, some really important transformation activity. So next one, please, Janet. Okay. So how we've done it, so we have a partnership board that you'll be aware of, the Calderdale Cares Partnership Board, and under that there's a group which is a Transformation Delivery Group. It's populated by the breadth of our partnership, and its job is to develop the plan and then ensure delivery of it and feed that assurance back up to the partnership board. It's a live document and it was signed off by the partnership board last Thursday, but it's also subject to change. So as we refine things, as we get, we've got a new urgent emergency care recovery plan, we've got more work to do on children. So this will be a live document, and it'll be something that will be, it'll flow through our architecture in terms of things that people want to talk about, want to help with, want to see the risks associated with. So our architecture and the key forums in there at this our architecture, including this forum, you guys may want to choose to see elements of that transformation. So next slide, please. So the content of it. So the content of it, it confirms the wellbeing strategy as its key strategic intent, and those 5 life courses that I know you'll be cited on from the work that Debs has done, and the big focus on prevention and inequality. It aligns with the 10 West Yorkshire ambitions and the strategy that's been developed there. I know you've probably had conversations with Ian Holmes and Rob Webster in the past, potentially, about the shape of that. But it's not just health and care, so it's not the traditional kind of NHS or social care. It's a bit broader than that. So it focuses also on important activities associated with regeneration, economy, poverty, climate change. And it, as I said earlier, it describes the ways of working. So the key kind of tenets of that, really, the well-being for all, having services that are seamless, harmless in community strengths, and working together. So that's kind of the way in which it's being generated. Okay, getting towards the end now in terms of what's actually in it. So next one, thanks, Janet. Okay, so there's a number of both transformation programs and key enablers. So there's 9 transformation programs and 10 enablers. So I'll just talk a little bit really quickly about each one. So the biggest one is the primary care and community services transformation. So we've got in there all the work to integrate community services and deliver the access programme for general practice, as well as introducing and putting in place a neighbourhood teams, hospital configuration programme that I know you guys have been really close to. The urgent emergency care transformation that's led by the Urgent Emergency Care Board. Transfer and discharge. So we know that we continue to be on a journey to make sure that we, as few of our patients as possible, are delayed in their journey out of hospital and through into that home first model that we've developed. Elective care, so that's everything that's not urgent emergency or the planned care. So we've had a big programme of work to recover. So our partnership board recently received an update on our elective care. We have some of the shortest waiting times across West Yorkshire for elective care, but we're also looking at transformation and the sort of the kind of services that may move into the community. Mental health, we've got a partnership now that is guiding the mental health development for children. And we're looking to convene a collaboration of partnership collaboration for adult mental health services who will drive that transformation. Cancer services, so we know we've got some national targets to meet, and actually across our CHFD footprint, Calderdale and Huddersfield Foundation Trust footprint, we do really well with those targets, but our focus there is on prevention and screening, because there are areas where we think we can actually make some improvements. Maternity, and I know you've probably talked to you quite a lot about this, so this would be about implementing national guidance, Ockenden, better births. And the final one, learning disability and neurodiversity. I won't go through all the key enablers, but you can see there's a range from, have we got the right estate? Are the digital options right? Have we got a combined data source that tells us about the people that need our care and support, who are perhaps accessing a range of services. So we've got a document now that kind of starts to shape up at a high level the transformation programs and the key enablers. So if we want to move on, Janet. So I guess it's over to you guys for questions, and also thinking about what you might want to see here in the future. So that's our, in terms of our priorities, a very quick run through of what is a very sizable document that was signed off last week. So I'll hand back to the chair.
Thank you. Janet, can you just take off the slides if possible, and so we can
Yeah.
Thank you. Just wait for a few minutes. It's always nice to see everybody in there. That's better. Thank you very much, Janet. That's very good. Thank you, both Robin and Debbie. I like my presentation short, the details in the document itself. So appreciate the outline and overview. We have Councillor Hutchinson raised his hand first, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got several questions, if that's all right. But
yeah.
Thank you, Robin. I'm surprised you haven't called the transformation plan Everything Everywhere All at Once, because it is a very comprehensive plan. But to start off with, as you say, the Integrated Care Board has been instructed to cut its budget by 30% over the next couple of years, which for a very new organisation is quite a tall order. We hear rumours that across the country, this is meaning a reduction in place-based committees, place-based boards. What are the impact? How will these reductions affect Calderdale Cares? And is there any truth in rumours that Calderdale Cares will be amalgamated with similar bodies in Huddersfield and Wakefield?
Okay, that's a very good question to start with, Kate Hutchinson. So it's not easy to give an absolutely clear answer to that question, and it's not because I'm not wanting to be clear, but because we are right in the engine room of designing what this will look like, and to the point where we have a half day tomorrow morning to begin to model what each place leads has started that process, and the other 4 places are doing this tomorrow morning. I think there are a few things though I can say. First of all, there is absolutely no intention to dismantle place-based working and place-based infrastructure. Firstly, we wouldn't have gone through the process of establishing a new chair and developing new priorities based around the place if that was the case. So I can say there's no desire to do that. I think you're right to say that different parts of the country are taking a different approach to this, and there's a continuum, I think. And having done a review of a borough in London recently, I think I would fair say that they are more towards already having a very centralist model and thinking they might consolidate that more. We are clearly more towards a place-based model, and we're not unique in that, but I think that it's a very strong part of our vision and purpose. So I don't see that it'll dismantle. What I'm going to be saying, and I'll say this to you, is that there is a critical mass for a place like Calderdale where the capacity becomes so limited that you really can't deliver a proper place-based function. And I think we're not far off that now. So I think that we are going to be saying that there is a level of core capacity that a place needs to support a place-based model of health and care. Now, I would say that doesn't all have to come from the ICB. So, we have leadership across all of the partners. We have Kath plays a leadership role, actually not just in Calderdale, but West Yorkshire, because she plays a leadership role for supporting the development of social care at a West Yorkshire level as well as Calderdale. Our Deputy Chief Executive of there's 2. Anna plays a key role around provider collaboratives, bringing providers together, including clinical primary care, to develop neighbourhood-based models. The other Deputy Chief Executive, Rob, who's new but is doing a great job, leads on some of the urgent emergency care issues, Gold, etc. So I think there's a reality that we all have a leadership role to play. But I don't think that whilst the detail of the model isn't complete yet, and the first thing that really will happen is we will share it with members, but we'll also share it with staff, because obviously staff are directly affected by this in the ICB. We will do that with an intention at the moment to begin formal consultation at the end of September. So that's the point where that will become clearer. There will be a structure and there'll be a formal consultation, because this is actually directly affecting people who are employed by the ICB. But I would say that there are some principles which are absolutely built into it. Place matters. The subsidiarity principle remains. But for Calderdale, that's going to look different to what it looks like in Leeds. And that's partly a reality of scale and partly a reality of some of our footprints, like the hospital and the mental health trust cross boundaries already. But all of that doesn't take away from place continues. The place committee will continue, and advocating for Calderdale will continue. And we'll fight for the best deal we can get.
Thank you. Thanks for that reassurance. Chair, that may be something to keep an eye on for potential scrutiny later on in the municipal year. The government make big play about community diagnostic centres, but there's only the briefest mention of them in the transformation plan. But they say that this is really important. The government says this, how important this is in early diagnosis of cancer, for example. What exactly is planned for Calderdale in terms of community access to community diagnostic centres?
I think
Debbie, do you want to answer that? Because I think it's.
Yeah.
I think there is some management of the ability of those to provide solutions in their own right. But I mean, Debbie, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just to say, I mean, we can kind of forward there is a business case that's being done to underpin the proposed CDC at Broad Street. It's populated through dialogue with clinicians in secondary and primary care about what are the diagnostic and point of care testing that would be really helpful to reduce inequalities and to provide more access for people in Calderdale. So it's been clinically developed, and as I read it, it's a set of this kind of tests, this amount. And so the plan is built up of a critical mass of testing that's needed to be done to create that financial and workforce viability. So we're on with it. I think it's good that Calderdale is fairly pinned down in terms of what it will look like, and we can certainly share more information.
That would be really helpful if you could do that. And the plan on page 15 of the plan refers to recognition of alternative provider of medical service reviews. What does recognition mean in this context?
Just remind me, which section are you in? Only because I haven't got both documents open. I've just got this.
It's the section on primary care.
Okay.
And it's the APMS.
Oh, okay. I can't give you, I have to be honest, can't give you a lot of detail. Debbie Robinson is our primary care kind of, but I'll get an answer for that, Colin.
Thank you very much. And final question is, I mean, you very rightly, Robin, put quality and safety as right at the top of the priorities. But one of the key elements of quality and safety is having a trained workforce that's able to use its to operate at the maximum of its capabilities and not beyond those. But workforce gets a disappointingly brief mention in the transformation delivery plan, with an over-reliance on new roles and new ways of working, which are largely unproven in terms of cost efficiency and saving, so are likely to only have a marginal impact. The long-term workforce plan for the NHS, which was released a few weeks ago, really reinforces that there needs to be a very rapid development of capacity, particularly capacity to train new health and care clinical and support staff, particularly for the urgent care response teams that we hope to see in each of the primary care network areas. We really need to do that training in Calderdale, training up Calderdale residents, Calderdale students to fill the gaps that's in a workforce that's rapidly aging. But there is no mention of this. There's mention of recruitment and retention, but there's no mention of training. Can you tell us what?
Well, it's a good challenge. It's a valid challenge. I think we'll take that away and think within the transformation group whether we probably need to better align what is a huge amount of work being done at a West Yorkshire level around the people plan. And the way that some of that work is West Yorkshire based, and is because of some of the nature of the pipeline of training, particularly through the university infrastructure, is kind of being done once at West Yorkshire level. In terms of the local response, we are developing a health and care academy model with Calderdale College. That's particularly looking at local populations, entry into social care, entry into healthcare, entry into roles around, potential entries into social care pharmacy, healthcare assistants, etc. So we are working at different levels on that. But I think this is a good challenge, Councillor, and I think we need to think about whether or not we are. It's not an omission of the work isn't happening. It's an omission of making sure we make those connections. I would say though, my only challenge is that I do think that the need to reshape the way that healthcare workers work and social care workers work is necessary. I think that there's a whole range of links to the advancement of technology, the ability to work differently to support people and to see different skill sets, particularly within, for instance, primary care settings, being important alongside well-established roles like obviously general practitioners, advanced medical practitioners. So I do think we are going to need to reshape some of the model of workforce, but I think we'll take that away as a good challenge, and we'll have a conversation about that in our next meeting.
Because we've seen with the primary care workforce that if we leave it to Leeds and Bradford to train up these staff, they stay in Leeds and Bradford, and Calderdale doesn't get a look in. So we need to train our own.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hutchinson, and thank you for the responses. Councillor Bellinger, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going back to one of the slides where you're on about the transfer of care and discharge and aftercare. One of the things that I've picked up on in the past is people being released out of care too early, which means then they end up coming back into the system because they've become ill again. I'm just wondering what assurances you can actually give to ensure that that's actually looked into or prevented, because otherwise we end up with the like a revolving door syndrome, basically, where they end up going out of care and coming back into care, which is obviously quite a cost, really.
So, I mean, I might ask Kath if she wants to add to this, but I could spend an hour on this. It's so much part of everyday business for us. And you're absolutely right, Councillor, that there is a risk of that. There's also a risk of people being in a hospital setting longer than they should be, and the deconditioning and impacts on their ability to either return to the best setting that they would have been able to, or to receive and benefit from reablement and support to be in living a good life outside of the hospital setting. So it's a very challenging, complex issue, which our very hard-working teams in both social care and the hospital are managing every day. I will say that it's incredibly challenging at the moment, and there will be a challenge for the hospital about trying to support people out of hospital into community because of the demand on space and beds and the negative impacts of people being in hospital. But also, like you said, either a premature or a bad move into the wrong setting can have the really counterproductive impacts for the person and their family and their health and well-being, and potentially can return them back to hospital. So ultimately, there's a risk-based decisions, and you don't ever get them 100% right all of the time. We do have very skilled staff. What we are finding is, and I mean, Kath may want to briefly add to this, is that we are working to manage people out of hospital rapidly, actually, and yet the sheer scale and volume and the complexity and acuity of people coming into hospital, not necessarily back in, just in, is continuing even at this time of year, which is obviously the summer, where you would hope it might be a bit easier. So it's an everyday challenge. We've been talking about it the last week. We are working on a model where we can really integrate our services around Home First and bring together the hospital and social work team to be one team, to think about the person rather than think about the setting. But I mean, I don't know if Kath, you want to add anything briefly to that?
Yeah, thanks, Robin. And you're absolutely right, Councillor Bellinger, to raise this. So, people who are in the wrong setting, whether that be in hospital, they can decondition. It's not a nice word, but they can decondition in hospital, but equally they can decondition in the community, in care homes and nursing homes, if they're not in the right place, or they're in that place for too long before they're able to go home. So I think we've all agreed as a system that the Home First model is the right model to make sure that people get get home. It does what it says on the tin. It's at home first, and that philosophy, both to prevent unnecessary admissions or premature admissions to hospital, that we consider people's own homes first, so we can support them at home, or on discharge from hospital, that we've got the right professionals and the right support to support people to go home and live at home. So that can include occupational therapists, physiotherapists, social workers, technology, aids and adaptations, etc., to make sure that people can go home first. I've just commissioned a review of our discharge to assess processes, just to give us assurance that we're not missing anything, we're doing the right thing, we're not actually discharging people into the wrong place. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain.
Appreciate the answers. Sorry, Chair. I'm just coming back on that one, if I may. Are there figures available on people's deconditioning, either at home or in a care setting? Are figures available as to how many we see?
I don't think I think it's a difficult one, that actually, to establish what's happened on a case by case basis, on an individual person basis, because it's really, people have complex needs and complex situations. So I don't think we're able to do that, but we can certainly have a look at what data we've got.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say, just conscious and appreciate Robin, but it might be that we need to wash up this at the next scrutiny meeting. So I think just conscious that we just might need that, because it's a huge piece of work. It's dare I say, colossal, and it's very ambitious. And I don't think that's not criticising anything. In fact, the opposite, that we do that. But obviously there's a lot to digest. And a lot to think about. So I think we need to do that. And I think maybe we just need to think about a wash up at the next session, if at all possible, depending on how this goes tonight. A couple of things. One, I just wanted to pick up a point that Councillor Hutchinson said. I think I've lost count of the number of times we've sat in meetings where we've heard about the quality of training in Calderdale. And I think, the GPs in particular, we're being told that it's nationally recognised. So I think we must not lose that, because exactly as he said, that will just lead to GPs moving away. A number of questions. I think just start with one, which is, when you speak to a resident, they're concerned about three things. They're concerned about GP waiting times. They're concerned about the number of or delay in elective surgeries, and staff issues. Is this plan focusing on those three? Because that's what the residents are looking at. That's what if you went to and asked somebody on the street, that's the three things that they would say they're looking at. And is the plan really, is the focus on those elements, and how is it being focused on those areas? I've got some other questions, Chair, but I'd just like to start with that one.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yes. So the short answer is yes. It does focus on those things, but I would slightly suggest that I think there are other things that people would be worried about. So there is a real focus on. So there's a real focus on mental health, and we don't want to lose that. The focus on mental health. It's often something that's been clearly spoken about less and given less parity. So we are really concerned about mental health. We are focused on the work around ensuring people transfer out of hospital, as we've just discussed. We're also focused on providing the best facilities in our location, and so you'll see the hospital reconfiguration is in there, and community and primary care is a key faction. So that the whole work around good community services, good primary care is in there. I think you're right that those things are really important. I be honest and say that it's very difficult not to be going backwards on elective recovery right now and waiting lists, because of the combination of workforce challenges and industrial action is setting us further back. So the numbers of people waiting for appointments is something that's clearly in the national media. I think the challenge is almost that the National Health Service has coped really well with the impact of people understandably taking industrial action around terms and conditions, but that's hiding some of the reality of the fact that thousands of people are going to be waiting for longer. And so I'd say the one thing that's really, really challenging at the moment is is going in the wrong direction is elective care. We do, as Debbie say, perform well, relatively speaking, particularly around some areas where we're focused on some of our activity, but it's very difficult to sustain that even at this time of year, and it's going to potentially get worse as we go into the winter. So I just would be honest and say that that's very, very difficult. And all of that will be publicly reported through the ICB, and clearly something you might want to look at at a future point. My final thing, Councillor Barnes, would be happy to come back again. I would just wonder whether, following on from Councillor Hutchinson's question, you might want to look at this again when we've got the operating model structure out, and maybe either I don't know your dates of your meetings, but maybe late September, early October, whenever you've got a meeting around that time, because you can then see where the ICB is potentially going to be going, and you can have a view on that as well as check in on where we are on actually delivering on these targets. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just come back to Robin? Yeah, I think, like all of us on this meeting, we're all aware of those other issues. I just think that if you go down, and this is what we're looking at on that side of things. You're right, mental health, and if you look at item agenda 7 on this, which is the joint working. So which we can see is Calderdale, Wakefield, and Kirklees, and that obviously has an impact. So yeah, absolutely right. Just want to have a key thing. I didn't know whether you answered this with Colin. Unfortunately, I dropped out due to crappy internet. Sorry about that. But obviously, the financial context here, not just of the 30% savings, but also the fact that we've got a financial deficit of 80 million. There's another 37 million needed to deliver in efficiencies, and there's also the financial pressure, on social care and other non-stat providers. Is there sufficient resources to deliver this? And as I said at the very beginning, I can only applaud you setting this huge task ahead of you. I think I think aim high is where we should be, and I absolutely applaud that. But it will be wrong of me as a scrutiny member not to ask for a reality check on that basis, and I just wonder whether or not there is going to be sufficient resources to deliver these projects as we want them to be.
Yeah, so no, there are not sufficient resources to do what we'd like to do. We have the resources we have. We, through this plan, are trying to prioritise those resources. We do clearly have some dedicated money, which we are hopeful and believe we will retain. So when you look at aspects of the transformation programme, for instance, there's a national programme on cancer. We are one of I don't know, you may know this anyway, sorry if you do. Our foundation trust is one of the top 3 performing in the country on waiting times around cancer. We could potentially perform not quite as well, and there could be money that could be used, or thinking about how money is used in other ways. We don't want to do that. Maternity services is a real challenge. You've had discussions on that. The model is really hard to deliver in its current form because of mainly around workforce recruitment and retention is hugely difficult. Mental health has a mental health investment standard. We have a real problem in recruiting and retaining staff. So there is the money there. We can't always deliver what we'd like to do. And then there's other areas like social care and the cost of acute care and elective care where we are really challenged by the budgets. We will do the best we can. Yeah. We will do the best we can within the resources we have. We always have to do that. If we think that there is something that we really cannot deliver and is failing because of resource, we will have to deal with that through the partnership board and brief you on that. But we are determined to be as ambitious as we can within the resources we can and get the best resource we can for Calderdale.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed Councillor Kingston's got a hand up. I'll if we have time, I'd like to come back on a few more points if possible, or things. So, yeah, but I'll drop.
Thanks, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Kingston.
Thank you, Chair. I want to come in with a little bit of hope after Councillor Barnes' comments there, because I was at this really inspirational event yesterday that I know you were at in the morning. Robin and Kath was with us all day. And just one of the things I heard there was that, you know, if we get social care right, I'm pleased to see in this report the inclusion of an item about co-production, which yesterday was all about co-production. And one of the things I heard was that if we get this right, and there were so many inspirational ideas shared yesterday, if we get this right, we will save money. And you're just making me reflect on that there, Councillor Barnes. And I suppose I just want reassurance that some of the, or a lot of the ideas that we heard yesterday, I was inspired by the community catalysts, the person from community catalysts about micro enterprises locally for social care. I thought that was outstanding idea. I'd like to see, I hope that we take that on board in Calderdale somehow, that we start to work on that. I don't know where that would fit into this, but I'm sure it could. That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Question.
Yeah. Sorry, thank you. That's really helpful, Councillor Kingston. I agree. I think there is hope. It's a tricky one, this, because there's a risk it can sound as if we're saying, oh, let's bring in the voluntary sector and community to solve the problem, and we haven't got the money. And I think what we are saying is entirely a positive thing, which I think you're right to highlight, which is that the capacity of the voluntary community sector and people to take agency over their own health and well-being has got to be one of the solutions, because we cannot continue the existing model. However, you know, there is a level of clinical leadership and investment in clinical expertise that we also need. And I think there is something about making sure the money's available for that, that we expect excellence, and that sometimes we will do that in Calderdale. Sometimes we'll do that at West Yorkshire, because, you know, there is a level of expertise where that's the right care at the right time for people, and that we need a hospital that is good, that is providing good care with excellent, well-qualified people to provide that clinical excellence. But actually, we want people to not be in hospital. We want people to live good lives for as much as possible. And when we get into, I mean, a range of the issues, I think mental health, learning disability, some of the issues around urgent emergency care and how we support people to find alternative routes into healthcare is all the things we said yesterday. And we just need to harness what is already happening out there, actually. I mean, I think the room was filled with people doing excellent work now. And I think we just need to give them the sense of power and agency, don't we? So I think you're right to be hopeful, and I am hopeful too.
Thank you. I've just got two elements before being Councillor Hutchinson and Councillor Barnes, and that is in relation to the PFI. Promise some assurances that actually it is actually delaying the building work in, you know, from the Halifax Hospital point of view, and is it going in the right direction? That's one of my points. The second point was in relation to the Joint Scrutiny Committee that I attended a few weeks ago now, and the hospital reconfiguration. We were sort of informed that this will be 5 years, a 5-year period, rather than what we thought was going to be a bit more instant. So I don't know if this reflects on what's your actual delivery plan. So I'm a little confused as to how the time and things, as to whether it's segments of the reconfiguration that you can deal with or not.
Well, it's probably a topic on its own, and I think the Joint Committee did, have a detailed presentation. I mean, clearly there's two elements to it. The smaller part but important part is HRI. That's nearing completion, and has really demonstrated what can be done around social value and a good construction program. There are phases around the Calderdale site that are progressing. It is going to take longer. There is a challenging kind of environment around getting these projects delivered. There are challenging costs, but there is absolute commitment, and just seeing absolute commitment from the highest level at the NHS and DHSC to make this happen. In terms of PFI, we are getting there, but it takes a long time. And I hope that we can kind of give us more detailed update on that very soon. But I think we are making progress. And I would say that I wouldn't see that as potentially ultimately getting in the way, but we just need to find our way through that to resolve that.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Hutchinson, please.
Thanks, Chair. I would like to say that in the mental health side of things, there's quite a number of aspects that I think do need to be looked at in greater detail, including the lack of mention of any resolution of the dual diagnosis services that so many people have, a combination of mental health and drug and alcohol addiction, abuse problems. The idea that Home First should be the preferred model for people who are undergoing a severe mental health crisis. So I think that, but there's a lot more that I think would be nice to have in the work program to discuss in detail. But I want to ask about the reliance on digital emphasis on digital services and digital access, how that correlates with reducing health inequalities, because the most deprived and unequal members of society are often the most digitally excluded. If you're thinking about people with mental health, learning disabilities, people where English is a second language, these are not people who are going to easily be able to use digital services. So how does that square with the reducing inequalities?
I don't think it's a binary issue, in my view. You're right, of course, that in terms of digital access to potentially, if you're looking at things like booking appointments, access to expertise, access to information, there is digital exclusion. If you're looking at digital and its role to support people to live more independent lives, I think that can play a part, and that with the right support, people who maybe are more reliant on either care support or less independent can become more independent. I do think, though, it probably is on the list of the things that you've just highlighted as something warranting a whole discussion with some people that can really represent some of the developing work we're doing around digital and artificial intelligence, and get a feel of what that begins to look like. Because I think it can too often, I take your point around things like people not necessarily using smartphones or not using a website, or being concerned or not feeling skilled enough to access those things. But I do think digital is becoming a much more wide-ranging thing, where technology can enable people to manage their own risk in terms of their health and well-being, and with the right support can live more independent lives, even if they digitally don't feel skilled. But I think it's quite a nuanced debate, and I think it was probably another topic, Chair, to come back to with some expertise that we can share with you.
I would say that the problem is that we always hear from the experts and the zealots rather than the people who are actually making use of these services. So yes, I think if we could have a balanced discussion.
We'll continue the principle then, and aim of yesterday with people with lived experience, talking about how digital's maybe enabled them to live better lives. Because I do think I can think in my family of examples of relatives who wouldn't barely ever use the internet, but has had support to live their life more independently through digital support. So I think there is
it is nuanced. You're right there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robin. I'm just conscious of time, and I don't want you to be locked into the building. So just, I know you're a fast runner, so I'm sure you'll get out there within 30 seconds. So I'm going to bring in Councillor River, and sorry, Councillor Barnes.
No, I was going to suggest that as well, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to perhaps add a little bit to what Councillor Hutton said in terms of the dual diagnosis issue. It's something that's come out strongly in the investigation we've been doing around domestic abuse, and you mentioned the issue around sort of mental health, alcoholism or substance abuse and addiction, and I think there's also a more general thing about mental health, that people do not just have mental health issues, or often don't just have those in isolation, and there have been particular concerns around dual diagnosis post being renewed. But I think perhaps a slightly different point is, for example, around neurodiversity and mental health needs. For example, are people on the autistic spectrum being able to access mental health service, or are they just again being seen as two separate specialisms? And again, a different but maybe related one around health and well-being of refugees and asylum seekers. I'm speaking a little bit from my background in teaching refugees and asylum seekers, issues of trauma, issues of mental health needs. So I'm just wondering how we can, again, it might be on the wish list, but I do think when we're looking at mental health and well-being, we need to look at how these things intersect and connect.
So, Councillor River, I really agree. I do think it's a real example of where we need to see the potential of strong voluntary community sector leadership and services to work with us. I don't think that a medical model is always the right model. I do think that there is excellence already in place. I know have had Neve Cullum talk about the work being done around Union House and Basement Recovery Project. We have got an investment around drug strategy. The problem is that these things are so cohort based. You kind of put people in boxes, and clearly they will transcend those boxes, and human beings are complex and lead complex lives. So I do think we have an environment where we work in partnership across those sectors. I think dual diagnosis is tricky. It's under-resourced. I think we need to be more creative, and we need to think about being receptive for people's presenting life experience rather than putting them in boxes. And I think, again, it's another long discussion we could have. I would say also on asylum seekers, I had a really good discussion earlier today, because it's Disability Pride Month, about some of the challenges of people arriving not just with emotional mental health, trauma and mental health issues, but people with disabilities arriving as asylum seekers and into Calderdale, actually, and the way we begin to access services for those new arrived communities and support families and deal with maybe the multiple layers of challenge. So I do think we are a place that really cares and is committed to this. It's not only the work of St Augustine's, but actually some of the work of our core services that are really making an effort on this. Some of our, at its best, some of our primary care is really strong. We do work with Bevan Healthcare around some specialist support across West Yorkshire. So I do think we are really committed to do our best on this, and it's core to our values and purpose. So I do believe that we will have a lot to say on that, and we do want to deliver the best we can.
Thank you, Robin. And if you happen to go by the next question, I appreciate you coming to the scrutiny. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. Just really less a question, more some comments, I suppose. I think it's just what big ticket issues here that we need to look at. And Robin, it was more when I suggested bring it back to scrutiny would be the next one will be for the scrutiny to have a look at it, for you to come back at a later date, exactly as you pointed out when the operating model is in there. I think, if we look at the big issues and look at some of the great work we've seen over the last 3 years, Burn Bridges, review, which was harrowing, but I think one of the best reports I've seen and one of the best reviews I've seen. I think the cost of living, I think the buying our care, these are the big ticket issues that actually produce some unexpected outcomes and reviews, and I think we should continue, and I think it's great that we continue that, and that's really what I'm looking for in the next couple of years in terms of this. And I think it's something we work well together, and I think I just wanted to put that on. I'm not as negative as Councillor Kingston says. Honestly, I am not as negative as she says, but that's it. But also I think we just need to maintain and focus, and particularly from a council perspective, that the priorities of the council align with the priorities there. So I think it's just something that we need to be aware of. So that was more, it wasn't really a question, Chair. It was more just a bit of an explanation of what I meant by coming back, so that we could have a look at it as a scrutiny meeting to come up with some ideas and thoughts for you to come back when you come back, once that business model is in place, and then we can have a full, meaningful conversation. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, Councillor Barnes. Thank you for
that. It does, Chair. Can I just say, I just thank you, Councillor Barnes, and I do think we both, myself and Debbie, and I know Kath and others, we really appreciate your level of engagement, interest, and incredibly thoughtful questions. This is the real strength. This is scrutiny at its best. It's actually giving us the sense of confidence that we are being asked difficult and good questions, because it helps us deliver the best we can be. But also, I think it gives us a strength within West Yorkshire to have this level of thoughtful scrutiny, actually, and people that will challenge and want to ensure that Calderdale and the health and care of people of Calderdale is prioritised, and the level of attention to specific issues is really welcome. So I will be at your whatever you determine is right about what and when, but I do think maybe in October discussion like this, but maybe about the operating model with hopefully some stronger reassurance even than I've given today about the commitment to place, and then also the progress on some of these issues we'll happily bring back to you. And I probably do have to go then, Chair, if that's all right.
Absolutely no problems at all. I think that nicely brings the item to an end anyway. So, but thank you very much for your time and attending, and quickly get out of the town hall. Don't we need to be?
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. So, thank you, members. So, item number 6 is buy now care. So, Kath, are you going to give us a short presentation? I do believe.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Blackburn. So I don't know if you've received that, Mike and Janet. Have you got the presentation?
I can't share my screen at present. Sorry, Kath, I haven't got the permissions to do it.
Yes, I've sent both Janet and Mike the presentation.
Janet, can you give Jo permission to share her screen?
Oh, you're on mute, Janet.
Is Colin still in charge?
I think Janet may have left the meeting, or she may have had.
No, Janet's there.
No, she's there.
She's on the next screen.
Yeah. I can do it if you've
Sorry.
sent it across to me, but it'll take me a couple of minutes to be able to upload it.
Can you give us permission, Janet?
Sorry, yeah, have you got it, Mike?
I've got it. If you give me and Joe Sutherland permission to share our screens.
Right. There. Is that the last one?
That's the last one.
I emailed you it, Janet, and I think Kath emailed it as well to you.
Right, yeah. Right, have you got permissions now? You should have.
No.
New share.
No, it just says disabled. Janet, can you get it off the email and share it, please?
Right, okay, yeah, I will do.
I've just emailed it.
Do you know what time it was emailed?
I can.
In the last 30 minutes.
Right.
1809, Janet, if that helps.
Right, okay, yeah. I'm just trying to get. Exit full screen.
While Janet's doing that, should we just start to introduce it?
That would be a good idea. Okay? Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So, as Scrutiny will know, the Buy Now Care review was from the recommendations from the Scrutiny Committee in March, I believe. So this item today is looking at the progress of the action plan specifically. So so I know you've got a copy of the action plan, and Joe's helpfully pulled together a presentation when we get it that just sets out the progress that we've made. So just in terms of the background, obviously this was a formally commissioned report. We created a governance and partnership group that has managed and monitored and given assurance on the development of the action plan. And on that group we've had, and we still have, we meet on a monthly basis now. We have got external partners like the Council of Mosques and community members of the local community who really hold us to account and have been incredibly helpful actually in that. So and that has really ensured our accountability in terms of holding us to account for the delivery. So Janice,
I've got it up. I'm just trying to get the share screen back. stop share. Can you see it now?
No.
Right, okay, if you can just bear with me.
I think, Janet, if you open,
Yeah, is it? Can you see it? Can you see it now?
It's actually on your email. So
I think you need to download it, Janet.
Yeah,
So you know, the right click on the BRC update.
Right,
On the right hand side, there's a down arrow. I think you need to download it onto your system first.
Right, okay.
You're doing a good job. No pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shall we continue to talk through the
the
presentation?
And I'll get it downloaded.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so Joe, I don't know if you want to come in here, because I think you should take credit on the delivery of a lot of the action plan. You've done really great work as our interim principal social worker. So I don't know if you want to start from the slide 3, the original action points.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kath. That's what I was thinking to start there. So from the original Bang Our Care report, there are a number of action points that the authors of the report had highlighted. And these were supported, I think, by Cabinet, by Scrutiny, about areas that we really needed to focus our attentions on. And there was about 9 in all. And a lot of it was around ensuring service users or their representatives were being invited for any continuing healthcare assessments or reviews with our colleagues in the ICB, making sure that there was culturally appropriate food and that any personal care was being delivered in line with people's values and beliefs. One of the other things that was quite key was ensuring that there was a culturally focused audit of the case files, particularly of the 7-8 families who'd been named. The other area that was a request for the service to look at was around Black, Asian and global majority safeguarding concerns, and anything where there might be a deprivation of liberty safeguards referral or any Mental Capacity Act assessments that were completed. The report was also requesting that there was a culturally informed workforce and for us to understand and improve our workforce profile in its diversity. It also wanted us to look at learning from any complaints or compliments and safeguarding adult reviews that might have taken place. And finally, the larger one really was to ensure that there was a decent provision of halal food. When we revisited this last time, we looked at the action plan highlights. And one of the things that I'd been looking at was ensuring that we were going to get a cultural competence and humility 12-month rolling programme. And that was being planned, it was being commissioned for. I'd undertaken as the principal social worker 4 case files audits of the reference cases. And I met with the Neurosybil leads regarding the action plans and what needed to happen next. Kath, meeting with the Council of Mosques, Cabinet leader and senior leadership team, set up the original weekly, but then moved to monthly meeting. And there was a jointly funded co-production post between the Council and the ICB, which was going to be going out to advert. We were looking at what our accessible documentation actually would look like, and also thinking about a workforce development strategy to try and increase our diversity. Where we're up to so far, we've commenced our cultural competency and humility training, and this also incorporates train the trainers. So this means that our offer will become consistent across the piece. And the people who've attended this training are representatives from the ICB, from the council, but also from our provider services, which we felt was also really, really important. ICB they've actually engaged now a formal quality assurance step within continuing healthcare to ensure that families or people's representatives are engaged in that. And equally, the ICB have now amended their decision support tools to ensure that cultural values and requirements for people's individual needs are reflected within these. The council sent out a memo of understanding, which was sent out to providers, which was around recognising the requirements for specific cultural care, but in particular, looking at people's access and rights to halal food. And we've also been working on our commissioning intentions. They're being processed as well. We now have a joint complaints process between the ICB and CNBC, because one of the complaints that had been brought forward from families was that it was really confusing and they didn't know who they were speaking to about what. So we met with the ICB, and we've now arranged that if any complaints come in that reference both organisations, that we will get together and we will formulate a joint response to these. We have undertaken some workforce profile undertaking, and we are seeking to increase our diversity. What I will say is workforce pressures are being felt across the piece nationally, across our NHS and our local authority colleagues, but we are doing as much as we can. The co-production post was interviewed for and recruited to, which is very exciting, and we've poached somebody from Kirklees, and she's joining us in September. I'll be able to, once we've sent out the formal offer, I'll be able to share her name and details. There's case file audits, which the ones that I commenced at Christmas, these will be ongoing. In total, Kath, myself, Cheryl Ann from the ICB, the complaints lead from the ICB, and also Zakira Pandor, who's our policy and procedures lead, went out to visit a number of families who we had been kind of engaging with as part of the process, of part of the complaint, of part of really what drove the buying our care in the first place. And subsequent correspondence has been sent to those families identifying what our key responsibilities and accountabilities will be to ensure that they're able to hold us responsible for the things that we've committed to and promised. And we have a new specialist social worker who's commencing in post in August 23. She's going to be doing a very set piece of work with the families who've been identified. She's going to be reviewing all of their case files. She's going to be reviewing basically brand spanking new Care Act assessments and any safeguarding concerns or DOLS processes as well, and engaging with continuing healthcare. And what that will do is it means we have a completely culturally sound base for each one of these family members' loved ones, so that it shouldn't then matter the demographic of the social worker coming in future when it's time for reviews, but actually they're culturally sound and sensitive from the get-go. The actions that we are in progress at the moment, this is for myself and the policy lead Zakira, who I mentioned. I'm coming up for 3 days to be visiting the clients themselves. Having met the families, Zakira and I are now going out to oversee the clients, look at their placements. Obviously, this will form part of the work that the specialist social worker is doing too. But actually, this was something that Zakira and I also wanted to see for our own assurance, and to be able to feed back to the board about, the work that we'd seen and any concerns or compliments that we may have about the service provision. We're in the process of creating some easy read for safeguarding. Now, nationally, nobody does easy read safeguarding if you're the alleged perpetrator. So actually, one of the things that I've been driving with one of the national safeguarding leads is looking at getting some paperwork that says if an allegation is made against you, actually what that process needs to look like. Because what we found was people used the term safeguarding quite a lot with these families, and families didn't understand what it meant. Nobody has done this yet to date nationally. So I'm hoping that we're going to be a little bit of a trailblazer with that, and then we can also share that nationally. We've had some quotes back in just today to also look at lasting power of attorneys being created in easy read, what DOLS is in easy read, and also about funeral prep, because that was one of the other things that some of the families had mentioned. They were concerned that their loved ones wouldn't necessarily have a Muslim funeral, or what that might look like to the providers and how they needed to support that. Children and young people, excuse me, they have undertaken their own responses to some of the key elements that were picked out from our engagements with the families, and they're going to be responding individually to the 3 families in particular who they'd raised their concerns really about their young people who were now adults, but their transition and how that had evolved basically when they came into adults from children's services. I've found a national lead who's actually based at London Borough of Camden to undertake adult family group conferencing. We've had this agreed, but we'll be looking at it in January, because we don't really want to keep drowning the workforce, but it's important that we recognise the use of genograms for families, because one of the complaints that had come up really was particularly around deprivation of liberty, that we seem to go immediately to an independent mental capacity advocate rather than actually considering another member of the family or a friend. And there'll be a wider delivery of the cultural competence and humility training, because our trained trainers will be up and running. And I've actually just been contacted by our Calderdale Safeguarding Adults Board to ask, could they tap into this? And I said, yes, actually, we'll be able to offer this training to you yourselves. And that's our updates. Any questions?
Thank you, Joe. That was really comprehensive and really well done for all the hard work that you've done in the background. I'm still sad to hear you're still an interim, not an actual permanent member of the team. So, Kathy, you need to deal with that accordingly. So,
I'm working on it.
Good, you better do. We'll hold you to account on that one. Councillor Hutchinson, please.
Thank you, and thanks, Joe. You've covered quite a large swathe of the main concerns that we've had, but obviously it's work in progress. That there's quite a bit more to do. I did wonder what's been the response of the existing staff to the culturally appropriate workforce development programme. How have they responded to that? And has there been any recruitment experience since adopting that?
So on a number of points, what I would say is what was known as the BAME network is now known as the Race Equality Network within the council, because it was felt that BAME is a title that isn't well received, in fairness, which is why I talk about Black, Asian and global majority. There is some work being done across the piece in terms of workforce development, so not just within adult social care, and we have been undertaking some recruitment. The challenge is finding the balance so that we're not being, there's a term that we don't want to be coming across as positively discriminatory, if that makes sense. We want to be inclusive, and we do want to be able to ensure that the people that we use to celebrate our workforce is across the piece. So we are also looking at men within that. So not just kind of the demographic of somebody's racial background, but also about their gender background, and trying to get more men involved, for example, in adult social care, because it is quite a female-heavy weighted workforce. There's an appetite. We've been working quite closely with Anne Waugh, our workforce transformation lead, and we've been looking at different ways to go out to recruit. We're doing larger sort of en masse recruitments now, which is about engaging, really selling Calderdale as a local authority and the very distinctiveness that we have here. It's not just about social work, it's also about the area that we're living in, and that we're working in. Because social work is social work, but actually if you get to do it in somewhere as lovely as Calderdale, it's a darn sight nicer than somewhere like Manchester, in fairness. So we're selling the wider kind of the idea and that opportunity to be in Calderdale as a council.
But the response to the cultural awareness and humility training, I just wondered whether the response was largely, oh, we know all this already, it's nothing new, or whether people have found it a revelation. Some people have found it a revelation.
They really have, and I think a big part of that is down to the trainer, who's a gentleman called Harry Sewell. And Harry he's so charismatic. If ever you get to attend any of his training, he's absolutely brilliant. He lives and breathes this. I think our journey started when we were able to secure the services of Chikere Bokwe, who's very well known outside of adult social care, but we managed to secure her to come in and be our keynote speaker at our International World Social Work Day. And I think that really sort of set the stall out for people to start wanting to engage with this and learn more about it. And we're seeing other work coming through about, understanding our Roma community and our travelling community. And I think people are feeling really excited that these are opportunities that they might not have had before.
Yeah, if it increases their confidence, reduces they're less scared.
Absolutely.
That's great. Thanks a lot. Well done.
What I will say, sorry, just to add, is I've also sent out practice notes to practitioners to be able to ask questions, the questions that they might traditionally have been scared of, but actually as long as people are asking sensitively and carefully. I know when Kath and I went out, we found people were, I learned things about the Muslim community I didn't know, about kind of metals that men can wear and not wear, and, taking that learning forward was really wonderful. And I've been really lucky working with Zakira Pandor, because she's very kind in helping me navigate anywhere that, if I want to sense check something is correct and is going to land, and not just from the South Asian community, but actually wider. I often run things past her and she'll say, oh, I'm not sure about that, Joe, let's reword that a little bit. So she's been a really good advocate there as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. I was just listening to what you were saying about positive discrimination and thought it was important to stress that there's a significant difference between positive discrimination and positive action. Positive action is legal, and it's really worth looking at what the police are doing with regard to positive action to ensure that they can recruit well into the police, so that the police become representative of the communities that they serve. Just wanted to make that point, and it's good to hear that there's been progress made. I have connections in the community, the Asian community, British Asian community in Halifax, and I've been hearing things through the grapevine that make it clear that things are happening. And just to stress again, as I said to Kath yesterday, there's a hell of a long way to go with rebuilding trust. We know there is, you know there is, that there's a long way to go. So just to mark that up again, that there's a lot of work to do to regain trust, that just as the police are finding as well. Kath, I presume you're still going to do your presentation, are you? Because I've got some more questions and comments there. Are you still going to do a presentation, Kath?
No, well, Joe and I, between us, have just talked through the presentation.
Right, okay.
So we've sent that to Mike and Janet, so we'll be able to have that. If I could just come in there, Councillor Kingston, on the trust, because I think you're absolutely right. That was it was so marked, I think, when Joe and I and others went on the individual visits to family members, and it felt like a real shift. Actually, it was very humbling, that we were invited into people's own homes and were welcomed in such a kind and warm way, and we've committed to meet a kind of quarterly basis, just to have a sense check, just check in with the families collectively, so we won't be discussing kind of individual progress. That will go on with the work that Joe and the social worker will do, but just to have a kind of group meeting, just to kind of check in, continue to build that relationship, really, and that trust with the wider community, because it was it was so lovely. Actually, it was really, really nice to meet with them, wasn't it, Joe? It was great.
It was. I ate so much. I honestly, the hospitality was outstanding, but I think my diet went rather by the wayside, sadly.
I did notice I read of course I've read the reports, and I've probably seen your presentation already, Kath, because if that's what's in the agenda, the appendix in the agenda, then I've already seen it. And I did notice the use of BAGM, which I thoroughly applaud. Joe, well done. Instead of BAME, it makes perfect sense. The one comment that I want to make is about yesterday, Kath, that it was noticeable that, Calderdale, I've gone and looked at my stats, it's something like well over 10% of Calderdale BAGM, British Asian global majority. And yet that wasn't evident in the room yesterday, although there were some Black and British Asian people there in the room yesterday. It was nowhere near 10%. And I was particularly concerned to see that there was nobody there from Nuri Sabil, who, of course, were a significant factor in this report being made. And I just, it feels like it needs to be more uppermost in our minds to ensure that we're doing inclusion, that on an event about co-production, there were no representatives there that are users of services from the British Asian community in Calderdale. I think that's significant. Why were they forgotten or left out yesterday in an event about co-production?
Yeah. So if I could just come in on that. So as I mentioned yesterday, Councillor Kingston, that wasn't by design at all, and nobody was excluded or forgotten or left out. Yesterday was it was a kind of event that happened by osmosis and really evolved into the big event that it was yesterday. The original intention was to have a very small, literally a round table discussion with our national colleagues from Social Care Future and some small group of people. and that grew and grew as interest in it spiraled, which was absolutely great. A lot of the people there with lived experience and carers and families actually invited themselves. So and we just, you know, it was a bit of open house. So because it was generating enthusiasm and interest, people kept saying, "Oh, well, can I come?" And of course we said, "Yeah, of course you can." We did invite some key people from the community, so from Halifax Opportunities Trust, for example, but it wasn't. We did realise actually we had not included certain people, certain professional groups that we will do at a next event. So yesterday very much was a starting point. It was much more successful than I had dared hoped for, and we certainly will kind of be as inclusive as possible.
So moving forward with that co-production work that you've started, you will ensure that Nuri Sabil and anybody else from various other communities in Calderdale are included.
Yes, of course. Yeah, okay. Of course.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Yvonne.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just want to go back a little bit about, very pleased to hear what you said about the success of the training. I was a equality and diversity trainer once myself in a previous life, so I do know how important it is to get this right, and it is difficult and challenging, and often it is around people's fear of getting things wrong and fear of asking the wrong questions. But unless we're able to share those in a supportive and respectful way, we don't really move forward. I just wondered whether we had any evaluations of that. I mean, I maybe have to share confidentially, but it might be interesting to see that if that was something you could share.
It hasn't finished yet. It's being run in 3 tranches because we joint funded with the ICB, so it actually finishes in March. And that's when all the trainers are trained, because it has to be staggered because it's Harry delivering the training. Once that's complete, I'm quite sure we'll be able to get some feedback and be able to share some of the wealth of the knowledge from it, and also then start to track where the trainers are delivering this trainers that they've been trained to deliver.
That's great. Perhaps one of the other things in the action plan I was perhaps a little less sure about was what progress we're making on the complaints process. I've looked at the feedback in terms of supporting working through the complaints, but I wonder whether we were actually overhauling the complaints process to maybe also make it easier for people to follow and more accessible. And I think, we can be fine, but actually getting complaint systems about it, organisational size is always going to have somebody where we don't get it right. And the point is, we're never going to get a position where it's 0 complaints. What we need to be able to do is learn from them, respond to them quickly and resolve those. And I wondered if we were actually looking at making the whole process perhaps more transparent and easy to follow.
So there is some work being done with our complaints colleagues, and they're looking at, I realise it's quite automated, but they're looking at an easy read access to the website where you can basically click the box of the place that you want to complain or compliment about or comment about. And they're just working through about how does that get divvied up to the right person in the right place, because otherwise you run the risk of it might come into the hospital team, but actually it's for the mental health team. So they're just trying to work out the nuances of travelling of those referrals. In terms of the joint work with the ICB, as it stands, if something comes in that says, really unhappy with mental health team, and actually the ICB, they placed my loved one 200 miles away, and it was your approved mental health professional that sectioned them, so I want to complain about that, and I want to complain about the ICB placing the person miles away, then what we would do is we would get together. I'd contact Janet Smart in the ICB, and then we would have that conversation, right, okay, how do we respond to this? You do your bit, I do my bit, and then let's pull together a joint response so that we're not pinging people off around the system.
That's it, because the one thing people hate, I mean, probably imagine, well, certainly I do, and probably a lot of us hate, even when we're really good at this, it's being passed from pillar to post around the system. So if we can avoid that as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. And according to Anne Kingston, here comes Mr. Grumpy or Mr. Negative. Thank you, Joshua Fenton Glynn, for that ringing endorsement there. I'm also interested in what's on Jo's wall behind her, actually, right shoulder. That's intrigued me for quite some time. a couple of things. I think I wasn't sure whether people were around early on. I think reports such as this are never easy. They're not easy, and the outcome and the output is not easy, but they're vital. And I think it's vital that we continue to look at them and just focus and just make sure things are going smoothly on the journey that we have. I think I just want to be a little bit pedantic, maybe more than negative. In if you go into the appendix, and some of them like Appendix 3, which is the religious culturally focused audit, it's amber, but it said it's amber, but it's ongoing. I just think sometimes we just, ongoing and amber to me doesn't quite strike right, especially if you look at, and I'm not sure whether the meetings have taken place, because if you look at 3, it says once the meetings with the families has taken place, and then further on, it actually says you had 2 days worth of family visits. I'm not sure whether those meetings have taken place or haven't taken place on that side. But obviously that says, for example, that's amber, but it seems like everything has commenced, but we're not sure when we're going to see a result. So I just like to see a little bit more time framing around things like that. And I think that is important when you're seeing things which are likely to be ongoing and continually ongoing. And I just think we just want to see a little bit of time framing so that we're seeing improvements and we're able to judge and come back to that. So that was more of a comment. I think most of the points have been well covered by previous speakers. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just jump in and say we will have some time frames once Asmat, our new social worker, starts, and she's due to start on the 1st of August. So because it's a very protected piece of work and she's not going to be doing anything else other than this work, I will then be, and she's going to be managed directly by me. So we'll be able to get those time frames nailed down.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Joe. And you still haven't answered what's on your wall behind you.
I can answer.
Upside down man.
I can answer it, actually. It's a bronze figure that's bungee jumping, because I've actually got a similar figure that's actually abseiling. So yeah. That's what it is. The observance, but fine, thank you. Kath, Joe, you've been an absolute superstar by doing all the hard work that you've done. I only want to reiterate that we do want you as an officer in Calderdale. Calderdale is a wonderful place to work, and I think you would fit in extremely well, as you already have done. So keep up the good work. Kath, thank you for the update on that as well, and supporting Joe, and you will continue to support Joe, I'm sure. So I think we'll continue to receive reports throughout the course, and very much welcome the progress that has been made so far. So thank you for that. You're more than welcome to stay, but I'm sure you have other things to do. So if you need to leave, you're more than welcome to do so. So that moves on to item number 7, which is proposed Calderdale, Kirklees and Wakefield Joint Health Scrutiny Committee on older people's inpatient mental health services. Mike, over to you. It's a very simple report, so it shouldn't take more than 30 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. And I think my connection may be a bit dodgy, so if you lose me, I'm sorry about that. So I will be very quick. So there has been an informal briefing about the proposals from the NHS, which they are pointing out to us is a substantial variation in service. There's been a meeting with some councillors from this scrutiny board and from Kirklees and Wakefield, who agreed informally to set up a joint scrutiny committee. So there are 3 things that I'm asking you to consider. One is to agree to establish a joint scrutiny committee with Wakefield Council and with Kirklees Council. One is to appoint 4 members to it, and I have had nominations from the political groups, or people can make nominations as they choose this evening. And the third thing is we're asking you to waive the political balance regulations. That's particularly at the request of Kirklees Council, who have adopted a practice over many years of putting 1 member from each of their 4 political groups on, rather than reflect the balance of the committee. That's the way they like to work it. It doesn't stop us doing anything that we choose to do. If you are happy, Chair, I can tell you the nominations that I've had from political groups, and you can decide what to do.
Yeah, please, if you'd like to do so, and then we can get.
So the nominations that I've had are yourself, Councillor Bradburgh, and Councillor Carr, Abigail Carr from the Liberal Democrat group, and Councillors Isra Ahmed and Danielle Durrans from the Labour group. So those are we have 4 places. Each of the councils has 4 places on this scrutiny board.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think I'll certainly propose all 3 of those options, that we do have a joint scrutiny. Councillor Barnes.
Seconded, Chair.
Yeah, superb. So all in favour in essence. Okay, so that's carried. So
just the other thing to add, sorry, Chair, which I should have said, is that one of those who would normally be the chair of the scrutiny board should be appointed the lead member. So that
can I nominate Councillor Blackburn, please?
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah,
that wasn't pre-arranged. I may point out.
That's bad. I think we need a seconder for that as well. Someone to second. Any one of those. Yeah. Super. And all in favour, I suppose. So yeah, fine.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. And if you want to stay on for the next item, which is the work programme, there's a bit of work to be done on the work programme. I had a meeting with Councillor Barnes, myself, and the Kath and Councillor Fenton Glynn. I'm not going to forget you out. Would I forget you out? Not at all. So I think that needs updating. Councillor Hutchinson has something to add just before you come in, Mike.
Yeah, and can I ask, yesterday we heard that in Leicestershire they'd done a study into the letters that are sent to people who are receiving direct payments for personal care. 4 pages, not in standard English, in jargon, with red ink on them, threatening all sorts of dire prognostications if various conditions weren't fulfilled. Leicestershire have done a clean-up job on their communications, which apparently has worked very well. I would like reassurance in the session that we're doing on the direct payment service that's scheduled for the 31st of August, if we could include looking at the communications that are sent out to recipients of direct payment and possibly other things. And then same session, the discharge to assess, you put down Sean Cook for discharge to assess, or home first, as we've heard. I'd asked for this in response to a report from Health Watch from several years ago as to how it wasn't actually working well. Can we invite Health Watch to that session? And because it isn't just to do with social care, it's also to do with the health care as well, because these people often have ongoing healthcare issues, that somebody either from Calderdale Cares or from primary care, more on the clinical side of things, should be able to respond as well. A couple of other ideas. Services in Calderdale to promote opportunities for people with disabilities to enter employment. Again, yesterday, I think we heard that only 5% of people with disabilities in Calderdale are actually in employment. It might be.
No. The national average is 6%. In Calderdale, it's 8%, and that's those with severe disabilities.
But the council does commission ISCAL, which are what would used to have been called sheltered workshops, and I would like to know a bit more about how effective that is being. There were also things that came out of that discussion on the transformation plan. Various topics, including the mental health aspects of the transformation plan. So can I make a plea for that to be included?
Yeah, so thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. Councillor Kingston.
Just want to comment that even though it's higher than the national average, 8% is still a very low number of
I mean, be worse.
Disabilities to have it in supported employment.
We did say that we wanted it to be higher. Like we were saying, I mean, that was the theme yesterday, was that we are ambitious to make it higher, but obviously, you know, we're outperforming the national average. It's there's systemic issues with the nature of work in the 21st century. So yeah, not necessarily all Calderdale, but yeah, obviously that's what we want to do. Just quickly on a couple of things Colin said, I think it shouldn't really be a problem to share the letters that we do. Obviously, yesterday was the letters that we sent out in terms of direct payments. Obviously, yesterday was a learning event. Hopefully, we have learned from that, and we, you know, that was one of the things that, kind of looking back on it, we do want to pick up. So we will. So you know, 31st of August might not be quick enough for us to have reviewed all of our letters, but it will be something that we are on with in terms of the transfer of care and getting people, getting people home. Is the Health Watch report about Calderdale, or is it a national report?
It's a national report, but with input from cases from Calderdale.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I mean,
it's a joint report between Health Watch and the Red Cross. It was I think it was in 2020.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for them to be invited in terms from our point of view. I think obviously Sean's the person that runs it from our side, so it's quite good in terms of the latest figures.
Mike, over to you.
Just to say that I've discussed this issue with Kath Gormally, and she's aware of the report, and she's got access to it. So we picked up on that link. Councillor Barnes and myself are trying to find a date to meet with Kath to talk about the scope of the report on both the charging policy and on the direct payments work. So we're on with that, and we will pick up on the issues out of the transformation plan, and I think it's probably going to impact quite significantly on your work programme over the rest of the year. Some really big issues in there.
Excellent. Okay, I think that concludes the business. So I'd like to thank you all for attending and asking all the relevant questions as always. So I'm going to close the meeting, and I hope you have a nice evening. We will be seeing each other tomorrow in great company. So thank you very much indeed. Take care.